And I told my mom about it, and I remember her saying that, like those feelings aren't right. You can't feel that way about a woman, you feel that way about a man. And so I didn't really talk about it through my childhood after that.
Welcome to Voices of Deconversion. We share the inspirational stories of deconversion told by former Christians who are now atheist or agnostic. Our stories remind us we're in it together. They encourage us as we discover who we are and help us to embrace who we become. Now here's Steve with today's guest.
Welcome back for episode 19. My guest today is 37 years old. She has 2 kids, a girl and a boy, ages 10 and 8. She was married to a man for 10 years and has been married to her wife now for 3 years. She's an exercise enthusiast. She enjoys everything from spin classes, hiking, or hot yoga, and she also recently got into golf, and she's loving it. She enjoys reading everything from historical fiction to gay and lesbian romance or mystery, and she loves playing adventure or RPG video games. She's currently playing Resident Evil 4 on the Wii. She's socially extroverted and spends most of her time with family and friends. Her story is so moving, and she was just a delightful person to talk to. Thank you, Kristen Hovitt, for introducing us, and thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story. Definitely don't forget to tune in for part 2 next week, where we get into Sarah's experience in getting her pastor's license, going before her church panel to argue in favor of living a gay lifestyle, and what ended up happening. It's an amazing story. This is part 1. You're going to love it. I'm very happy to be joined today by Sarah Brennan. Sarah, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So you made me laugh when you emailed me because you said that if something combines outdoors, exercise, and alcohol, I'm in. Well, that was really funny. So I think you found the perfect thing in golf then.
Yes.
How often do you get to play?
Not as much as I would like to, maybe like once a month.
Yeah. But you're down in Arizona, so the weather cooperates with you most of the year, I take it.
Yeah, even when it's really hot, it's cool on the golf course.
Oh, wow. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, because of the green and everything.
Yeah, cool. So do you prefer to refer to yourself as an atheist, an agnostic, or is there another term you prefer to use?
No, agnostic is probably more accurate. I lean more towards, I guess, atheist, but I don't like to assume that I know everything, so I don't really refer to myself as anything, but yeah. Agnostic would probably describe it the best.
Cool. Mm-hmm. In what ways was Christianity a part of your childhood, and how did it influence you?
So my parents were both very evangelical growing up, and so I was born into it and forced to go to church, even if my parents weren't going. Just as a child, my sister and I would have to walk up the street and go to the local church there. And then when I was about 9, we all went together and had to go every Sunday, and I kind of hated it the whole time. And then when I was 13, my parents sent me to one of those camps, a youth camp for the evangelical church. I was part of the Foursquare movement at the time, and just had been going through a lot. My mom was divorced and remarried, and I knew that I was gay from a very young age, since I was about 5 years old, and so just had a lot of kind of stuff going on in my head, and it was very emotional there at the camp, and I had a lot of friends there, and just that gathered around me, and it was this really intense experience. And I remember just crying and just having this group of kind of just loving people around me and feeling I believe this, I want to be a part of this. And so ever since then, I started getting really involved in the church. And when I was 15, I went on my first mission trip, went to Mexico, and we got to build a house for people. And I just saw just how great that could be, just to be able to help people. And I was taking Spanish in school, so I was really passionate about the Spanish language, about the people. Later, I went to Costa Rica. We just did a lot of very evangelical things, like slaying people in the spirit and praying over people and healings and all this stuff. And so it was just this really exciting thing to be a part of, especially when I was a teenager. And it kind of took my mind off of just the homosexual feelings that I had. And I didn't really have to like think about that because I was surrounded by friends, and I kind of got like the touches I needed in the friendships that were really deep and just intense. And so it kind of diverted that a little bit. I mean, it was always there, but it helped me kind of like not be so focused on it. It gave me like some sort of outlet.
Yeah.
And so then when I was 18, I spent a month in Ecuador, and after that went off to Bible college like you did.
Mm-hmm.
Became a pastor, was super involved in that. Never really dated any guys or anything. People are always kind of pushing me to it, but I was just never into it. I came home from college one year, and my parents like had this guy who was from Venezuela, and I loved the Spanish culture, and were kind of pushing me towards that. And I became friends with him, and I remember him asking to date me, and I was just very like kind of hesitant about it. But then I figured like if this was kind of the path that I was going to take, if I was going to marry a guy, it would be him.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting engaged and getting married. And then we got involved in more of a reformed theology. So it became really intense. Like I couldn't be a pastor anymore because they didn't believe in women preachers and that sort of thing. Just got really, really intense about like the Bible and taking it literally. I did the sound team for like the worship team there, and was involved in like women's ministries, and just really
that was a Reformed church, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was kind of I was still evangelical, where, we believed in the fruits of the Spirit and sang and spoke in tongues and things like that. But the theology behind it was very, very like strict, very like kind of more of a Calvinist way of thinking. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
The total depravity, like just just
depravity
that kind
of depravity of the flesh or the sinful nature.
Yeah, and just like once you're saved, you're always saved. So like you don't have a choice really. Like God chooses you. There's only a few elect. That just type of like just kind of theology, just very like inclusive, not inclusive.
Yeah. So I have some questions before we jump into more of that, because it all sounds really fascinating. So when you were growing up, you said that you knew you were gay from an early age, and I think you had mentioned around 5 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of already answered this question, but it was really intriguing to me because you said that the friendships that you made through the church, or just the people you were around, they were so loving, and they were deep friendships, like really, I guess, supportive. Yeah. And so it kind of maybe fed the need for another person in your life or something.
Yeah.
Did you ever tell anybody when you were young how you felt inside, and I don't know, I guess I'm curious, how did you know at the age of 5?
I had a kindergarten teacher that I just like had these really strong feelings for, and I knew that it was different than like how the other kids felt about her, and just about like it felt like the feelings that I saw like in the Disney movies, the way like the princess would love the prince, those type of feelings. And I couldn't put like my finger on it, but I knew there was something like that was different, that the people around, that my friends around me like didn't feel.
When I think back to how I was relating to people when I was 5 or 7 or whatever, we all have those, I think, memories of maybe someone who you're really drawn to them, and it's different.
Yep. Yeah. And I told my mom about it, and I remember her saying that like those feelings aren't right, like you can't feel that way about like a woman, you feel that way about a man. And so I didn't really talk about it like through my childhood after that.
Yeah, because obviously in the church, and in the conservative church in particular, that's obviously really discouraged.
Yes.
Do you have any memories of like preachers talking about that, or being in groups of people who were talking about homosexuality and having to kind of keep quiet about how you felt?
I actually grew to kind of hate it in myself, and so I was kind of on that bandwagon where I would agree with them and be like, yeah, like they can choose, to feel a certain way. And so I was like on the total like opposite end of the spectrum. Like I knew it was in me, but I hated it. And so I would like try to pretend like I was like straight, like all my friends and everything, and I would be passionate about it and talk against it, and just, I don't know, I always had like all these plans of how I was going to live this like quote unquote like normal life. And so, yeah, at that point I was so closed off to it that it didn't necessarily like make me feel bad or any way that I was aware of it.
You just basically jumped on the Christian bandwagon of it's wrong, it's a choice. And were you successful at putting those kind of thoughts out of your mind?
No, I had a lot of, like, every single year, like in high school, actually all the way like from grade school to high school, I would have like like a best friend who was somebody that I had like those types of feelings for. And every year, like, it would end badly because like it was very obvious that like I was interested in them in a more like romantic way, and they would start to feel like weird about it. And so I never was able to like hold on to anybody really for more than a year. The people that I had those romantic feelings for, I had lots of friends that I didn't have romantic feelings for that I kept, and I still have some of them to this day. But specifically with those sorts of friends, like because I wasn't able to be honest about it, and it was just weird for them, like what is happening.
Did they kind of sense that on your end it was a little bit more of a romantic feeling than a friendship feeling?
They never outright said it, but they knew that something was like weird or something just was off. And so I ended up like pushing them away, and they just ended up feeling bad about it because it was like I would express something and then they would obviously not share my sentiments, and so then I would just push them away and we wouldn't be friends anymore.
Yeah. You'd find some way to basically create distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I was in Bible college, my first year there was a girl that I met, and we were like really close. Like we slept in the same twin bed and we would hold hands, and we were just had this like very, very like, we were pretty much dating, but like nobody knew that we were just like best friends or whatever. And
so this was in Bible college?
This was in Bible college, yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe girls can get away with that a little bit more because sometimes girls can be more touchy-feely than guys.
Yeah. And I remember my stepdad telling me, he's like, if this girl was a man, you would be pregnant. And at that point, I ended up I told them both, like my mom and my stepdad, that, I like women. And my mom was like, yeah, I know. Like we've known, since you were little, but it's wrong. And you need to cut off this relationship with her. Like this is wrong. And, that sort of stuff. And the girl actually ended up like she lived in Seattle, and so we went up to like for me to meet her parents and everything. And I remember I went to like get in bed with her, and she was like weird because she was very concerned about what her parents thought and everything. And she's like, well, what if my parents come in? And she just kind of flipped out and was like, this is wrong. This is disgusting. This is like not right. And I was just like devastated. And I left and swore that I would like never have feelings for a girl again. And then shortly after that, that's when I met the man I ended up marrying. And I told him before we got married that I was gay and I had feelings for women, but I didn't want to live that lifestyle. So he knew. He was like one of the few people that I told.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting dynamic because he knows going in that you have these feelings, but as a Christian, he's thinking, well, it's just like him with things that he feels drawn toward or wants to, it's different. It's like everybody has a certain sin that kind of pulls at him or something. So maybe he's just thinking this is yours and you'll just make the choice to not do it.
Well, and he, like, as a child was abused by a male family member, and so he thought for a little while that he might be gay because with men, like, just a touch can arouse them. It doesn't matter, like, if they're attracted to somebody or not, or if they like it. It just, like, is a physical reaction sometimes. And so he hung out with a lot of gay people throughout high school just because, like, he felt comfortable with them, but then realized, like, he wasn't gay.
Interesting.
And so I think he felt like he had told me that he felt like he kind of understood the way that I felt and that it was okay. And I had told him like, I'm never going to live that lifestyle, it's wrong, and that sort of thing. And we were both like, love Jesus, and we're all about that. And so it was like, this will be okay. This will work.
So as you were growing up, how did your faith develop? So there was obviously this was a huge part of, being gay was a huge part of your struggle and a huge part of your faith. But what else was a part of your faith growing up?
Just the feeling of like never being alone. Like like, even if like life was, just terrible. Like, my mom had some pretty rough, like, abusive relationships growing up. And, there were some hard things. My dad left when I was like 8 years old, moved to a different state. I saw him maybe twice a year, just those feelings like of abandonment and knowing that there was like a loving father out there that would never leave me or forsake me. Like all those things just really like drew me to the Christian faith. Just that feeling, never being alone, never being scared, never being like unwanted, always being loved unconditionally. Like that idea of unconditional love was just like really appealing to me.
Yeah, I can see why, especially if you have a broken home, or like you said, your mom's going through a lot of these really difficult relationships, and so if you felt alone, you had like your Heavenly Father, to kind of lean on.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was just, and then I loved like going on those missions trips, and like, it felt so good to like help people and to have this like sure, like answer, like where like I could say confidently, like God is all you need, or, and it's like, I had an answer for everything. And it was just so great to like be able to provide people this like hope, this truth, and in life, like there isn't always like an answer. There isn't always, something to explain. Sometimes you just sit there and it's hard, and things are, things are broken, and you just have to kind of sit in there and wait for time to heal it. But like with Christianity, it was like we didn't have to do that. Like we had an answer. We could get it right then, right now. And it was kind of this instant gratification. I could, like, if I was feeling terrible, I could just go listen to worship music, and I would cry, and I would lift my hands, and I would feel so good afterwards. And it was just this instant, like, feel good. Like, I always said, like, oh, I don't need to do drugs. I don't need to have alcohol, because this is like my high. Like, I can just feel good off of it. And so that drove me a lot too. I'm a very passionate person, and I thrive on just like those highs and just feeling good. And so it was like my high. It was almost like an addiction to, this church and going and being surrounded by people and just having this like energy. I think that's why I'm so into those workout classes, because I have like surrounded by people and that energy and the music, it's like that high intensity.
I was going to say, like what do you replace that with? Because that's obviously something that I struggled with, and a lot of people do. So for you, these exercise classes and the different things that I mentioned in the intro, those things are, your interests. Would you say those are the things then that you kind of fill your life with?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I go probably like 6 times a week, and I just love it. Like it, because I get that same high, but there's no hidden agenda. There's nobody telling me that I have to live a certain way. I can live however I want, and I can still have that feeling.
Did you ever, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but did you ever have a moment where you thought about, like what you just said about Christianity, if you have a bad day or things aren't going right, there's like a quick fix for it, reconnecting with God or whatever. Right. Was there a moment in your life when you realized that wasn't true? And do you remember that at all?
As I got a lot older, like I'm trying to think. I remember right after I got married, I had watched a movie, and I didn't realize that there was like some lesbian stuff in it, because the Christian church is very strict about like what you watch, even like the music you listen to and stuff like that, so you're not tempted. And so I had watched this movie. It was called Kissing Jessica Stein, and I didn't realize, like, I don't know, I guess I didn't read the back. I just thought it was like this romantic comedy. There's like a guy on the front, and so I just thought it was this romantic comedy, and I was sitting at home watching it, waiting for my husband to get home, and it's this whole thing about how she like falls in love with this woman, and I just saw them like, kissing and having this moment, and it just like awakened something inside me like instantly. And it was just like I had this feeling that no amount of like praying or worshiping or whatever would like give me this sort of feeling of what I was feeling, like watching these two women and get together, and just this like feeling that that's like what I want, like so desperately. And then I told my husband about it, and he's like, you shouldn't watch those things, and so I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't. But it like intrigued my interest, and so I ended up watching another one that I knew was, had those elements in it, and just became kind of like obsessed with, that. And then, I'd go back and forth. Like I would stop watching, movies like that because it just was really hard.
Yeah, because I imagine
But
it would,
yeah,
like you said, it awakened a lot of feelings inside of you. So then if you watch that, it's easier to just not think about it probably and not watch those movies than it would be to watch them and try to put it out of your head.
yeah. I mean, honestly, like if I were to be completely honest, if the church would have been okay with me like marrying a woman and living that identical life, but with a woman, I would probably still be in the church today. I mean, I don't believe it now, but that was what led me to like start questioning, where I probably wouldn't have questioned. I probably wouldn't have like even like kind of went down that path. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's really what started me just questioning, because it's like, how can, why would God give me these like such strong desires and tell me that I can't have it? And I started realizing like it was part of who I am. And I remember like a lot of my Christian friends were like, because I became more open about it. Like, I'm gay, but I'm, living for Jesus. And so my friends would
Yeah.
always tell me like, it's so great that you're gay. It makes you who you are. Like my Christian friends would tell me this, and they're like, you can't act on it, but like you wouldn't be who you are unless you were gay. And so then it just became more frustrating. So it's like, okay, so everybody likes me so much better because I'm gay, but I can't I can't do anything about it. So here I am like
Yeah.
with this like struggle and this like heartache, but it's who I am, and I'm so great because of it. And so it's just like this source of frustration, and that's when I started really questioning.
Wow. What else about this time in your life as you were growing up is significant? Up to the point maybe when you were like in high school.
Yeah, I think I've said pretty much everything. As far as I think a lot of my questioning happened like later in life, when I just started to explore more. There were 3 people in my life that I could name that had like a huge impact on me leaving the church. And one of them was my dad, my dad who left and went to California. I still maintain like a good relationship with him, mostly after like I graduated college, because
Uh-huh.
he ended up moving back to Arizona. And we would have these, he was really into the church. He was a worship leader. He's this really talented musician. And he's the one actually who got me into the Reformed theology. And
Oh.
so he ended up leaving the church because they wouldn't like accept like the type of music he was playing, because it wasn't like exclusively about God. Like it wasn't like bad music, like with swearing or anything like that in it, but it wasn't like, the focus wasn't always like God. Sometimes it was on, he would be talking about like people's pain or things like that, and it wasn't like exalting to God. It was like just about life and things that happen. And so that ended up like, and he questions things a lot too, but anyway, he ended up leaving the church, and that was huge for me. Like I was kind of devastated when he left, and I just remember talking to him and having all these conversations, and him telling me, what, it's like okay that you're gay, and you shouldn't, have
Wow.
to have the church like tell you that it's not okay, and
How
you could be
old
so much happier.
how old were you during that time?
I think I was like, I want to say like 29 or 30,
Okay, so this is
something
a
like that.
while. Yeah, this is a while down the
It's
road.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It took me a while just to really like um, kind of realize, what was going on. But yeah, I had a lot of deep conversations with him about spirituality and just about God. And he would tell me, he would just tell me things like, there's stories like this all over history. There's, like even the ancient Greek, like mythologies, they talk about like a savior. They talk about, a father. They talk about the creation of the world. And this was way before the Bible was even written, and it just started making me think like, this story is not original. Like it's not like the one truth or somebody, that it wasn't like something new, I guess. And
The only answer like you were raised to believe.
yeah, and then I was talking to him, and then, Kristen, she's my best friend. She had a huge impact on me leaving too, because she ended up leaving the church a lot earlier than I did. Probably like she left when I was in college. I was 21, and I remember her emailing me saying that she left the church. and she was bisexual, and I was just like blown away, like trying to
Wow.
convince her not to be bisexual, and we'd always been friends. I'd known her since I was 7 years old, and she just kept,
Wow.
like Sarah, I finally, I'd never even told her until I was like, I think like 27 or something like that. And I finally told her that, yeah, I'm gay. I like women. And she was just kind of blown away because I was so hard on her for,
Wow.
being bisexual.
Yeah,
And
that must have been a really interesting conversation.
yeah, so we became even closer after that. And she just kept telling me, she's like, Sarah, like, how long are you going to live like this? How long are you going to, live this lie? And I was like, I can't live any way else. And she sent me these podcasts, actually, that I ended up watching. And it was basically, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it was basically this guy who was like a born again Christian. And it was like 7 different, like, hour-long podcasts, and how he wanted to prove, that he was truly a Christian. He kept saying that in the beginning, like, I don't want you to think that, I was just like this mediocre, like I was this on fire, like passionate Christian. And he basically walked through the podcast of how he became an atheist and how he doesn't even believe in God or anything, like full-blown atheist. And he had all this like kind of Harvard writings, like about the Bible and just all this proof for it. And that like kind of blew my mind. It just rocked my world. It just started me questioning after watching all those podcasts. And I had my husband watch them with me too, and he was trying to like give me explanations of how like what he was saying wasn't true, but it was too late. It was like what any sort of like thing that he was saying to refute it just wasn't good enough for me, because what this guy was saying, it like made a lot of sense. And so yeah, I think those 2 things just really like had an impact on me.
So, real quick, so Kristen is the one that introduced you to that podcast?
Yes, yeah, Kristen was.
And and with your dad, when that was all happening, you said around 29 years old?
Yeah. So Kristen told me when I was like, we were both 21,
Okay.
that she's leaving the church, she's bisexual. Years later, I told her that I was gay. And so she started talking to me when I was about 29 or 30. My dad left the church, and that's when she introduced me to the podcast. And then it all kind of happened simultaneous. Like I was talking to him, was talking to her, and then at the same time, I had like fallen in love with this woman in a spin class, and so it was just really hard, because I was like in love with this woman, and she wasn't religious at all, and she would tell me like, Sarah, just be who you are. And then I had Kristen, who's my best friend in the world, giving me these podcasts telling me like, Sarah, it's okay. And then my dad, who I really respected, who was part of the church, left, and it was basically like, this is BS, Sarah, like don't like feed into this anymore. So I had these 3 people just kind of pulling and just showing me kind of just these facts, like this is not anything new. This doesn't even make sense. Like, and they would just take me through it logically. And I just started questioning it and finally came to the place where it was almost like I just woke up one day and was like, God, I don't believe this. Like, and I remember having moments where I felt sad about it. Like, even if I wanted to believe it again, I can't. And like, I had this kind of like, I don't know, almost like happy life with all these friends. And now that just knowing this, I could never go back. And I remember people telling me like, oh, you could go to a church that accepts gay people and just continue on your life. And I was like, I can't, like, I don't believe it anymore. And I'm very extreme. And so it's like, if I'm gonna believe something, I'm gonna believe the extreme belief of it. I'm not gonna go to like some watered down version of it. So it's like I'm kind of all or nothing. I try not to be that way, because I know it's it can be unhealthy at times. But I have that kind of thinking in my brain. So it was like, no, like, and I just stopped going. Like, I just completely just stopped. I never had any inclination to go back. I didn't miss it. It was just like I just stopped believing, and that was it. I mean, there was that sadness there because I lost like a ton of relationships over it.
What were some of the relationships that were lost?
I had a lot of friends in the church that would kind of give me that like kind of physical touch, nothing like sexual, but they would always be like touching me or stroking my hair. They knew like I needed that or whatever. And they felt like, if they could give me that, then that was, like I could be satisfied with that and still like live this Christian life. And so when I left the church, my husband and I were divorced and started dating women. They were just devastated because it was like they couldn't fulfill that need for me anymore. I didn't need that from them because I had the real thing. It wasn't just this,
Yeah.
And so I don't talk to any of them anymore, really. Actually, I can't think of one person in the church that I still talk to, because it's like once you do that, it's just done.
Yeah.
I still have a really good relationship with my ex-husband, though, and we talked about everything. Like I'm very honest, and I was very honest with him through the whole thing, and told him when I was falling in love with the woman that I did, and just was super open. And when we decided to get a divorce, like I told him I was on a dating site. I remember him looking at women with me, like on the dating site, and we've always been very close. I lived with him for like a year.
That's actually remarkable, and that's so great that you had that kind of a relationship at that point, because I can imagine most of the time it probably doesn't go that well.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, we both cried a lot, and I mean, because I was with him, we were married for 10 years. I'd known him for 12, and we had 2 children together, and it was just really hard. And he's just a good person, even though he's still like in the religion, he still believes all that. Like he's just like, he's a good person, and like he loves our kids, and he's always been very kind to me, even though I decided to leave and
so he
follow
saw
her.
Yeah. So he obviously saw it coming. You had mentioned that right when you got married, you had kind of told him that you had these feelings, and of course you guys had the mm-hmm. Christian understanding that it was just something you just had to stay away from and not do. And
yeah.
So do you remember a time when it became pretty clear you were starting to lean more toward embracing that you were gay? And was he kind of like, it sounds like he was kind of along for the ride, like he was kind of aware as things were developing. Is that true?
Yeah, and we went to years and years of counseling. Like we went to counseling up until like we ended up divorcing, just to try to like pray the gay out. And, if you keep going, in a straight path, then that will become more comfortable the more you do it. And, after a certain point, it's like, it's been 10 years. I mean, I don't think this is going to become like more natural for me. Like I couldn't tell him that I loved him. Like it was just really like hard. Like I did love him, but like as a friend, like I was never in love with him. And it was like I always tried to like be in love with him, and it was just really hard. And I finally told him, I'm like, I just like want you to be with somebody who like is in love with you, who's just like is passionate for you. And I just can't like be that way. Like I can't like have those feelings for you. And I just felt bad. Like I felt like I was taking something away from him. And of course, he said that he didn't care, and I was loving his life, and he doesn't mind living this way. But I don't know, I just didn't feel right about it. I didn't feel right about it for him. I didn't feel right about it for myself. It just was
to stay, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Didn't
it was
feel
just
right.
hard. It was just
but he
hard.
was telling you that he could keep going, that the marriage was fine on his end.
Yeah, because we still had a very physical relationship. I'm a very physical person, and so, but it was like the feelings weren't there. Like there was not a lot of like cuddling or like oh, I love you, like that intimacy.
Yeah.
It was just physical. And then we were best friends, and so we had a lot of fun together. And I don't know, it's funny, a lot of my friends would tell me like, oh, you should stay in this relationship because that's what's most important is the friendship. And I can tell you, like, being with a woman is a lot more dramatic. It's a lot more heartache. It is definitely easier being with him, but it wasn't real. I was pretending to be something that I wasn't. And because I didn't have those deep feelings, that's why it wasn't dramatic. That's why there wasn't heartache, because I didn't care about him like that. Whereas with, my wife, like, I have very deep feelings for her. So, if there's a disagreement or something like that, like, it hurts a lot more than it would with somebody who's just like my best friend. And so I had to like learn all that too, that, like it's harder, but it's worth it, because this isn't something that's real.
Wow, yeah, there's just such a difference between, I mean, it almost sounds like you guys had a really great friendship and you were really
Hmm.
close, but that's kind of where it ended for
Yeah,
you.
for me, yeah.
Yeah. How did you explain it to your kids?
The four of us, because I lived with him, we all lived together for like a year after we were divorced. And so I remember telling the kids, we all did, and my ex-husband was like very supportive. He sat next to me and we just explained to them about what being gay was and about me and how, I love women like the way, Prince Philip loves Sleeping Beauty or whatever. We explained it to him in like a Disney, because they were pretty young. They were like 3 and 5 at the time.
Ah,
And so they were cute about it. They didn't really get it. They were, I heard them having conversations later, like when we weren't in the room, and they were like, "Oh, so are you going to be gay or are you going to be straight?" And my son's like, "I don't know. I think maybe I'll be gay." And she's like, "Well, I thought you were going to be straight." And he's like, "Yeah, you're right. I think I did say that." And they're having this full on conversation about like
that's
whether or not they're
hilarious.
going to be. Yes. I was just like, oh my gosh. Okay. But yeah, they obviously understand more now, being 8 and 10. But I started dating my wife now about a little bit after that. And so I had introduced her as a friend, and I was still living with my ex-husband at the time. And so finally we ended up sitting down again and having this conversation, and saying like, okay, well, your mom's dating somebody now. And my son like knew right away, like it's like, oh, it's Carly, it's I know it's her. And my daughter was like, no, it's not. Carly's my friend. Like mom wouldn't do that. And and ended up having to break the news to her.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
yeah, but I don't think my son remembers a time like without her. I don't think he really has memories of me like not being with a woman. So I think for him it's like easier. And
Yeah.
then my daughter has always she's more like Carly than she is like me, um, like in on the inside. And so she really like Carly gets her, and she gets Elizabeth is my daughter. She gets her, and so it's like I don't know. We've kind of been a family, like the five of us for a while. Just and my ex-husband gets along with Carly, and we'll drink beer together, and he'll come over and hang out at the house, and we'll go over there and do stuff. And so he's remarried now. He just got remarried a couple months ago,
Oh,
and we
wow.
really like her, and so we've had them over for dinner. And I don't know, it's a weird relationship, but
Yeah.
it works.
So it sounds like that year transition probably helped in some ways, but I would imagine at some point you have to move out, and
Hmm.
do you think that was harder on the kids than telling them that you were gay?
Well, so I ended up taking them with me. So when my my wife now, she got a job in Salt Lake City, Utah, and so I ended up moving out there with the kids, with her for a year. And so I think it wasn't super hard for them, because they were used to. I was a stay-at-home mom. Well, I
Oh,
worked
okay.
part-time, and so I was with them most of the time. And so like leaving their dad was a little bit hard, but they were used to being with me all the time. So like they were with me the whole summer, and then they went back to go to school in Arizona, but I would see them every 2 weeks. And so it was kind of this adventure for them, because they'd fly on the airplane by themselves, and or I would come and I would stay with him when I would come visit and things like that. And so it was like more like this kind of adventure for them. And so they didn't seem like super upset about it. And whenever they came to Utah, we'd always do all these fun things. Like we go to the national park, and we had their dad come up for Father's Day. And so he stayed the weekend with us one time. And so they just saw that we were all like kind of a family. And
Yeah.
so it didn't seem to be, I mean, I'm
It wasn't
sure
as
like,
traumatic as it could have been for sure.
yeah, yeah.
That's
And so,
great. I mean, that's really
and
good.
then we moved back, and we all moved like right next door to each other. So we lived in like literally across the street from each other. So they would like walk over and come to our house, and they'd walk back over and go back to their dad's house. And so we'd always lived like really close and did things together. We went to the movies together, did stuff. And so it was just like, oh, we have this like added person in our family now. And I think it was a little confusing because they would just say like, well, why can't we all just like live in one house, like Carly and you and Dad?
Because you all get along
like,
so well.
Yeah, and we're like, well, not quite that close.
Well, during this time, this entire time, what was the most difficult thing for you?
I think it was really hard. I think like I was really excited to move in with my wife now, but it was also really hard because I was leaving like everything that I ever knew. I was leaving, and even like leaving him, like, you know, I'd lived with him for 10 years. And so like I missed him, like even like leaving and being with her, like I missed him. I missed like seeing him every day, and I missed, you know, playing video games with him and like going out with him, and just the conversations that we had. Like it was just, I remember calling him a lot, like when I was there and talking to him like for hours on the phone and stuff like that. And it was hard for him too. He wrote me this goodbye letter and I cried. And so I think it was just really hard. Like even though we're like on good terms, it was just like this whole change of life. And, you know, I lost most of the friends that I had in the church, so I didn't have the community that I had once had. So I kind of had to rebuild that. And I did that a lot, like with like my gym classes. I kind of built this community of people that I hung out with, like from like gym classes that I had. And we made a lot of friends out in Salt Lake through Carly's work and then through my work too. And so it was kind of just this whole rebuilding of my life. And so I think it was hard.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Deconversion. Be sure to join us next time by subscribing to the podcast. If you'd like to learn more, check out our newsletter at vodpodcast.com.